Hi, I'm Randy Patterson, and this is Psychology Salon, a channel about psychological issues. If you like this kind of thing, click subscribe. Today's video is on avoidant personality disorder, which is one of a series of personality disorders, most of which I have no intention of posting about. The reason I want to talk about it is that avoidant personality disorder is getting discussed more and more in the public sphere, and whenever this happens, there's a lot of misinformation that goes out with it and oversimplification, which, given that this video is pretty short, is probably here too, but at least I will tell you that. If you watch this channel with any regularity, you'll know that one of my interests is the transition from dependent adolescence to relatively independent adulthood and the people and families who experience difficulty there. And amongst this group, avoidant personality disorder gets thrown around as a self-diagnosis a great deal. It's one of those areas where I think a little bit of psychological chat can do more harm than good. So, first, what's a personality disorder? Well, as I've said before, that's hard to say. There are all kinds of definitions. Ask a bunch of pretty good clinicians that question, and you'll get a lot of different answers. In general, it's a tendency to respond in certain generally unhelpful ways to a wide variety of situations in a wide variety of circumstances. It's not tied to a specific relationship or setting. How's that for vague? But we're talking about avoidant personality disorder. What's that? Well, it's a general tendency to respond to life challenges with a single coping strategy. Get away. Don't look at that electricity bill. Don't respond to that challenging email. Don't deal with that situation. Now, this can sound great. If you avoid a saber-toothed tiger, you've pretty much solved the problem. And even in the modern world, avoidance can be a useful thing. You don't like high-pressure sales environments. Great. Look for a different career path. But to count as a problem, you have to be using avoidance as a tool over and over and over again in situations where it really doesn't solve the problem, and in most cases where it makes the problem even worse. You're damaging your life by avoiding things that shouldn't be avoided or that can't be avoided for very long. In avoidant personality disorder, most of the criteria focus on a concern about being embarrassed or receiving criticism from others or being revealed to be inferior or incompetent or of being rejected. So the focus tends to be on interpersonal situations, though a lot of people routinely underestimate their abilities in other areas as well, so they think there's no point in getting my driver's license because I'll never learn to park. And I don't want to look for that leak in the kitchen because it'll turn out to be something I can't handle. Let's pretend I don't hear it. I'm not going to go over all the specific criteria in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, partly because I don't want to promote self-diagnosis, which is more of a problem than anything and doesn't really help people. Suffice to say that most of the criteria are behavioral. The person avoids. They avoid being around people unless they're certain they'll be liked. They avoid jobs where others might criticize them. They avoid new activities because they won't be good at them right away. They avoid social settings for fear of rejection. And there's a secret about avoidance. We're wired for it. In our evolutionary environment, one of the best ways of dealing with most of the threats we experienced, like saber-toothed tigers, was to get the heck away. Avoid. We feel anxiety and fear. Fear talks to us, and generally, it says the same thing over and over and over again. Get out of here. Don't go over there. Retreat to safety. Avoid, avoid, avoid. We're designed to do it. But we live in a world where avoidance doesn't usually help. We avoid opening the electricity bill, and the bill just gets bigger, and maybe we get cut off. We avoid social settings, and we never get the practice we need to get any better at it. We avoid friends, and we feel lonely and dissatisfied with our lives. We avoid employment, and we sink into poverty. But it's worse than that. Avoidance feeds back and makes the fear stronger. You say, oh, I'm not going to that social event, and you immediately feel better. But the next time there's a social event, the fear is a bit more. And the temptation to avoid is a little bit stronger. Avoidance breeds avoidance. It makes a person more and more fearful in the long run. If you've been bitten by a dog, you'll probably be a bit nervous the next time you're around a dog. If you run away, that fear is going to get stronger. The more effort you put into avoiding dogs, the worse your fear of dogs is going to be, and the stronger will be the impulse to get away. So, we're talking about avoidant personality disorder. Why is this person avoiding so much? The reason I want to talk about the diagnosis, or the usually bogus self-diagnosis, is that people often think it provides an explanation or a cause of the problem. And it doesn't. If you have a fever and you think, why do I have a fever? You might realize, oh, you have COVID. The COVID is the cause of the fever. It produced the symptoms. So it's natural to think, why is avoidance so tempting? And think, well, it's because I have avoidant personality disorder. The disorder causes the avoidance. It's not me doing it. It's the disorder. But the disorder is not a cause. All it does is it describes what the person is doing. How do we know they have avoidant personality disorder? Because they're avoiding so much more than other people who also avoid, but maybe not quite as much. Why are they doing that? Well, because they have avoidant personality disorder. It's circular reasoning. It doesn't explain anything. The disorder is not a cause of behavior. It's just a description of behavior. Why are you hiking? Because I'm hiking. Why are you wearing purple? Oh, it's because I'm wearing purple. Why are you avoiding so much? It's because I avoid a lot, which is really all that avoidant personality disorder means. So why are they avoiding so much? Well, close to the same thing. It's not because they are avoiding. It's because they have avoided. Most of the problem is that they have avoided over and over and over again, and they've experienced that short-term reduction in anxiety. This is a reinforcement or a reward for the problem. It's like getting a chocolate bar every time you avoid. Again, why do I worry about these kinds of distinctions? Because people self-diagnose themselves as having avoidant personality disorder because they avoid a lot and they feel tempted to avoid a lot, which is all avoidant personality disorder is. And they interpret that as a kind of illness, not as something they can do anything about. I have no choice but to avoid because it's who I am. I have avoidant personality disorder. It's almost, I am avoidant personality disorder. The label becomes a personal identity and a reason to engage in the very behavior that produces the label. Avoidance is a spiral, and the diagnosis is often a cue to make the spiral worse. The truth is, a pattern of avoiding and a temptation to avoid, which is really all we're talking about, does bring a signpost to the resolution of this problem, gradually pushing back. feeling the temptation to avoid, but moving forward anyway. This weakens the pattern. Each time we push forward and overcome the avoidance, starting with very mild situations, we build an alternative tendency, an alternative pathway. I could avoid, or I could go anyway. And as we avoid less, the temptation to avoid gradually weakens. Now, it never goes away completely. Remember, fear will always tell us, get out of here. That's what fear does for everyone. The ability to override that fear, that temptation, is a muscle that gets stronger the more we use it. And after going somewhere we'd been avoiding, and then going there again, and again, and again, the fear itself begins to fade. Pat 10 dogs, and the 11th isn't quite so scary. Do 20 job interviews, the 21st, no big deal. The goal in therapy is to turn that arrow around. If you're tempted to avoid or have actually been told that you have avoidant personality disorder, this is not a reason to avoid. It's a reason to do the exact opposite, to figure out the low-level situations that you can override and move toward them rather than away. In my work, I generally don't diagnose people with avoidant personality disorder because all it does is describe what's already going on. And we already know that. And it takes a behavior and it turns that into what sounds like a characteristic of the person. It goes from what you're doing to who you are. And the whole point of therapy is to help you grow beyond that vision of who you are. Avoidance is not who you are. It is a tool that you might be overusing. And there are other tools that you can use that might work better. Imagine someone trying to hammer a nail with a screwdriver. And you say, hey, a hammer might work better. And they say, no, you see, I'm a screwdriver person. That's who I am. Well, they could become more if they added a hammer to their repertoire. The more a person thinks they have avoidant personality disorder, or the more they've been told that by others, the stronger my recommendation. Approach is the practice. Approach and survival. Not waiting for confidence. Confidence is the eventual result of approach, the outcome. It's not a prerequisite. Confidence does not come first. It comes after the approach. Doing something we're tempted to avoid that is objectively not dangerous and surviving the experience. And the more we do that, the less that term, avoidant personality disorder, fits anyway. It might have fit me at one point, but it doesn't anymore. And that just goes to prove it's not who you are. It never really was. There are other videos on this channel on the psychology of everyday life. Click the subscribe button for more. I also have an online course site, psychologysalon.teachable.com, with programs for professionals and for the general public. And my book, How to Be Miserable, 40 Strategies You Already Use, is available from online booksellers. Thanks for watching.